But first the Apache woman had to know if he was worthy. She said, "I want your child." He did not come to the desert looking for love. He came with a backpack, a work contract, and a plan to stay only 3 months. The job was simple on paper. He was hired to help with an environmental project near a small Apache reservation. He thought it would be an adventure, something different from his usual city life. He did not know that the land would change him before he even understood what was happening. The first thing he noticed was the silence. It was not empty silence. It was deep and alive. The desert stretched far in every direction, golden and wide, with mountains rising in the distance, like quiet guardians. The wind moved through the dry grass and whispered across the open land. At night, the sky felt endless, filled with more stars than he had ever seen in his life. He felt small there. On his first day, he tried to act confident. He introduced himself to the small team he would be working with. Most people were polite but careful. They did not ask too many questions. They did not smile too much. They simply observed him. That was when he saw her. She stood a little apart from the others, listening more than speaking. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, and her eyes were steady and sharp. She was not cold, but she was not warm either. She looked at him as if she were measuring something. He smiled politely. She nodded once. That was all. Later, he learned her name from someone else. She had grown up on that land. Her grandparents still lived there. She worked part-time helping with community programs and also assisted with local land preservation efforts. This project mattered to her in a way it could never matter to him. At least not yet. The first week was harder than he expected. The sun was strong, and the work was physical. They spent long hours walking across rough ground, checking soil conditions and marking areas for restoration. He was used to office spaces and short meetings, not hours under an open sky. Still, he did not complain. He noticed that she worked without slowing down. She carried equipment easily and seemed to know every inch of the land. Sometimes she would stop and point out small details, a plant growing where it had not grown before, a change in the soil, animal tracks that he would have never noticed. "This land speaks," she said once, not looking at him. He did not understand what she meant, but he nodded anyway. Over time, he realized she was watching him. Not in an obvious way, but she noticed when he arrived on time. She noticed when he stayed late to finish a task. She noticed that he listened when elders from the community came to check on the project. One afternoon, an older man approached the group. His hair was gray, and his steps were slow but steady. Everyone greeted him with respect. A man asked questions about the work. When it was his turn to speak, he chose his words carefully. He did not try to impress. He simply explained what they were doing and why. The older man studied him quietly. After he left, she spoke to him for the first time in more than a few short sentences. "You talk less than most outsiders," she said. He shrugged lightly. "I'm still learning." She looked at him for a moment, as if deciding something. "That's good." As days turned into weeks, he began to notice more about her. She carried herself with confidence, but there was also responsibility in the way she moved. Children in the community greeted her happily. Elders called her by name with pride. She helped without being asked. She did not seek attention. One evening, after a long day, the team sat outside near a small fire. The sky turned orange and pink as the sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains. Someone told a story about growing up on the reservation. Laughter filled the air. He listened carefully. When it was her turn to speak, she shared a memory about her grandmother teaching her how to respect the land. She spoke about traditions not as old habits, but as living truths. Her voice was calm but strong. This place was not just her home. It was her identity. Later that night, as he walked back to the small place he was renting, he felt a shift inside himself. He had come thinking he would observe this community from the outside, but he was beginning to feel connected in a way he did not expect. The next morning, he arrived early. She was already there? "You're early," she said. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted. She gave a small smile. "The desert does that." He hesitated before speaking again. "It feels different here, but different doesn't mean temporary." He did not fully understand her meaning at the time. He thought she was talking about the land. He did not realize she was also talking about herself. As the weeks passed, small moments built something between them. She began asking him simple questions about his family, his childhood, his reasons for choosing this kind of work. He answered honestly. He told her about growing up far from places like this, about feeling restless in the city, about wanting to do something meaningful. She listened without interrupting. One afternoon, while they worked side by side repairing a damaged section of fencing, he made a mistake and placed a post incorrectly. Instead of correcting him immediately, she let him figure it out. When he noticed and fixed it himself, she nodded slightly. "You learn fast," she said. "I try to," he answered. "That matters more than being perfect." Her words stayed with him. He began to understand that respect here was not given because of titles or education. It was earned through action, through consistency, through patience. Some evenings she would walk him through parts of the land and tell him stories connected to certain places. Not sacred details, but enough for him to understand that history lived in the ground beneath his feet. He asked questions carefully, never pushing too far. Trust, he realized, moved slowly here. One day, as they stood looking out over the open desert, she turned to him with a serious expression. "Many people come here," she said. "They say they admire our way of life. They say they feel connected, then they leave." He swallowed slightly. "I'm not planning to disappear. Planning and staying are different things." The wind moved between them, carrying dust and warmth. In that moment he understood something clearly for the first time. She was not impressed by words. She was not interested in temporary feelings. She was watching to see if he had depth, if he had strength, if he could handle more than just beauty and adventure. He realized he was being measured, not in a harsh way, but in a careful one. And strangely, he did not feel offended. He felt challenged. That night, lying under the wide desert sky, he thought about how much he had already changed in a short time. The quiet no longer felt uncomfortable. The work no longer felt exhausting in the same way. The people no longer felt distant. And she no longer felt like just someone he met through work. She felt like a door to a life he had never imagined. But he also sensed something else. If he stepped through that door, there would be no halfway. No pretending. No temporary promises. He closed his eyes, listening to the wind move across the land. He had arrived as a visitor. He was beginning to wonder what it would mean to stay. And somewhere not far away, she was also thinking, not about whether she liked him, but whether he was strong enough for what her world required. The desert watched them both, silent and patient. The second month began with heat that felt stronger than before. The sun rose early and stayed high in the sky, covering the land in bright white light. By now he was used to waking before dawn. He no longer needed an alarm. The desert itself seemed to wake him. He stepped outside each morning and felt the dry air fill his lungs. In the beginning, everything had felt unfamiliar. Now the scent of dust and wild plants felt almost comforting. He still knew he was not from there, but he no longer felt like a stranger in every moment. She was already at the worksite when he arrived that day. "You're getting used to this place," she said without looking at him. "I think it's getting used to me," he replied lightly. "We'll see." He did not realize that the real tests were about to begin. A few days later, she asked if he was free after work. "My grandmother needs help repairing part of her fence," she said. "If you want to come." He agreed immediately. Her grandmother's land sat slightly higher than the rest of the area, with a clear view of the mountains. The small house looked simple but strong, built many years ago. The wood showed signs of weather, but it stood firm against wind and time. Her grandmother greeted him kindly but carefully. Her eyes were sharp, even with age. "So you are the one working with them," she said. "Yes, ma'am," he answered respectfully. She handed him gloves without another word. The work was harder than he expected. The old fence posts had to be removed from dry, stubborn ground. The sun burned above them and sweat ran down his back. At one point his hands slipped and he nearly lost balance. He could have joked. He could have complained. He did neither. Instead, he focused in, silent but observant. When he struggled with a post stuck deep in the earth, she did not rush to help. She waited. He adjusted his grip, changed his angle, and tried again until it finally loosened. Her grandmother noticed. "Most men would give up faster," the older woman said quietly. He shrugged. "It just takes patience." Her grandmother nodded slowly. After hours of work, they finally finished. The fence stood straight and strong. He felt tired but satisfied. He did not ask for praise. Inside the small house, her grandmother offered water and simple food. He accepted gratefully. The room was filled with old photographs and handmade items. Every object seemed to carry history. "Where is your family?" he answered honestly. "Do they know you are here?" "Yes." "And when your work ends?" He paused slightly. "I haven't decided yet." The older woman studied his face carefully. Decisions show a person's heart. He did not respond quickly. He understood that his answer mattered. Later, as they walked back toward the road, she finally spoke. "She likes you," she said. I wasn't trying to impress her. That's why she noticed. Helping with the fence was not about strength. It was about showing up without hesitation. It was about being willing to serve without reward. But that was only the beginning. The following weekend, she invited him to a community gathering. It was not a public event or something for visitors. It was local, familiar, deeply rooted in tradition. You don't have to come, she told him, but if you do, just observe. He understood the meaning behind her words. When they arrived, he noticed the difference immediately. The atmosphere felt more serious. Elders sat together, speaking softly. Children ran nearby, but even their laughter seemed respectful. He stayed slightly behind her, following her lead. He greeted people politely, but did not try to take attention. When food was prepared, he offered to help carry items. When chairs needed arranging, he quietly assisted. A few of the older men began watching him. One of them approached later in the evening. He had strong features and a steady voice. "You've been here some weeks now," the man said. "Yes, sir. What do you think of this place? It feels alive, different from where I come from. It feels like people belong to it." The man nodded slowly. "And do you feel like you belong?" The question caught him off guard. "I'm still learning," he answered truthfully. The man looked at him for a long moment. "Learning is good, but belonging requires more." He did not forget those words. As the evening continued, he noticed how she moved among her people. She laughed more freely here. She spoke with confidence. She helped elders stand. She corrected younger children gently. This was her world completely. He realized that if he ever wanted to stand beside her fully, he would need to understand this world, not just admire it. In the following days, she seemed quieter. He wondered if he had done something wrong. Finally, while they worked near a dry riverbed, she spoke. "Do you know why I brought you to my grandmother's house?" she asked. He shook his head. "She wanted to see your character." "And?" "So I'm still being tested." She looked at him directly. "Everyone is tested. Not physically, but emotionally. It would have been easier to keep things light, to treat their growing connection as temporary. But he did not want temporary anymore. Another challenge came unexpectedly. A small argument broke out during one of the workdays between two team members. Tension grew quickly. Voices rose. The atmosphere shifted. He could have stepped back and avoided involvement. Instead, he calmly suggested a solution and offered to take on extra work to ease the pressure. His tone remained steady. He did not try to control the situation. He simply focused on fixing it. She noticed. Later that day, she walked beside him in silence before speaking. "You don't react quickly," she said. "I've learned that reacting fast doesn't always help. Anger makes weak leaders." He glanced at her. "I'm not trying to lead. Not yet," she replied softly. Those words stayed with him long after. The tests were never dramatic. There were no big speeches or clear announcements. Instead, there were small moments. Watching how he treated children, watching how he spoke about his own family, watching whether he respected boundaries without being told. One evening, as the sky turned deep purple, she stood beside him overlooking the land. "You know," she said quietly, "some people think love is about feeling excited all the time." He listened carefully. "But in my world, love is about responsibility. It's about whether someone can carry weight without running away." He felt the seriousness in her voice. "And you're trying to see if I can carry it?" he said. She did not deny it. "I have to be sure," she replied. The wind moved gently around them. He understood now that she was not protecting herself alone. She was protecting her family, her future, her culture. Anyone who stepped close to her would also step close to all of that. He felt both honored and pressured, but instead of fear, he felt determination. He wanted to prove that he was not just passing through. As they walked back toward the lights of the small houses in the distance, he realized something clearly. These were not obstacles meant to push him away. They were gates. And every day he stayed, worked, listened, and respected the land, he moved one step closer to earning trust that could not be bought or rushed. She still watched him. The elders still observed. The community still measured his presence, and for the first time in his life, he did not want an easy path. He wanted to be worthy of something that required patience. The desert remained silent around them, but in that silence, something strong was slowly being built. By the time the third month began, he no longer counted the days the way he used to. At first he had marked time carefully, thinking about how long he would stay and when he would return to his old life. Now, the calendar felt less important. What mattered more were the quiet changes happening inside him. The land no longer felt like a temporary workplace. It felt familiar. He knew which paths were rocky and which were smooth. He knew where the wind grew stronger in the afternoons. He even began to notice small details the way she did. A shift in the soil, the way certain plants leaned toward the sun, the tracks left behind by animals passing through at night. She noticed these changes too. "You're paying attention now," she said one morning as he pointed out a new patch of green near a dry area. "I'm trying to see what you see," he replied. She looked at him for a moment, thoughtful. "You'll never see it exactly the same, but trying matters." Their conversations had grown deeper over time. They no longer spoke only about work. Sometimes they talked about childhood memories, sometimes about responsibility, sometimes about fear. One evening after a long day, they stayed behind while the others left. The sky was painted with soft orange and gold, and the air felt cooler than usual. They sat on a large rock overlooking the wide-open land. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then she broke the silence. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked. He smiled slightly. "Everyone thinks about the future." "I don't mean dreams," she said quietly. "I mean weight." Her face was serious. "What kind of weight?" he asked. "The kind that doesn't disappear when things get difficult." He understood that this was not a simple question. She was not asking about jobs or money. She was asking about commitment. He took a deep breath before answering. "I used to think about success in a simple way. A good job, a comfortable life, maybe a family one day. But I never thought deeply about what it takes to truly build something strong." "In my world," she said slowly, "family is not just two people choosing each other. It is choosing generations. It is choosing to carry stories forward. It is choosing to stay even when staying is hard." Her words settled heavily in the air between them. Then she said something that made his heart beat faster. "I don't want a temporary life," she continued, "and I don't want a temporary partner." He felt the seriousness in her voice. She turned fully toward him now. "If I ever bring a child into this world, that child must grow up with strength, with identity, with roots. That means the father must understand what he is stepping into." He swallowed slowly. "I want your child," she said calmly, "but only if you are worthy." They were steady and clear. For a moment, he could not speak. He had imagined conversations about feelings, about attraction, about whether they liked each other, but this was different. This was about legacy, about responsibility that would last a lifetime. "You're not asking lightly," he said finally. "No," she replied. "I'm not." He looked out at the desert stretching endlessly before them. The land felt larger than ever. The sky seemed wider. "What does worthy mean to you?" he asked carefully. She did not answer immediately. "It means you stay," she said at last. "Not just when things are easy, not just when it feels beautiful. You stay when there is pressure, when there is sacrifice, when there is misunderstanding. It means you respect where the child comes from. You don't try to change it into something more comfortable for yourself." Her eyes were steady on his. "It means you protect, not control. You teach, not dominate. You listen, even when you think you know better." Her words were strong but calm. He felt both honored and overwhelmed. "I don't know if I'm ready," he admitted honestly. She nodded. "That's why I'm telling you now." The wind moved softly around them, lifting small pieces of dust into the air. "In my culture," she continued, "bringing a child into the world is sacred. It is not just about love between two people. It is about responsibility to the land, to the elders, to the future. I cannot choose someone who sees it lightly." He understood now that this was not a test of feelings. It was a test of character. "I care about you," he said quietly, "but I don't want to promise something I can't carry. That's why I respect you," she answered. They sat in silence again, but it was not uncomfortable. It was thoughtful. Her words repeated in his mind. "I want your child, only if you are worthy." About the city lights and the fast pace, about opportunities waiting for him if he returned. He thought about his family, who expected him to come back after the project ended. Then he thought about her, about the way she carried herself, about the strength in her voice when she spoke of tradition, about the quiet pride in her grandmother's eyes. He realized that being worthy would require more than love. It would require change. The next day he approached one of the elders who had questioned him before. "May I ask you something?" he said respectfully. The older man nodded. "What does it mean to be worthy here?" he asked. The elder studied him carefully before responding. "It means you understand that this place is not yours to shape. You must shape yourself to it." The answer was simple but powerful. Over the next weeks, he became more intentional. He did not try to impress anyone. Instead, he focused on consistency. He volunteered for tasks that required patience. He listened more deeply during gatherings. He asked thoughtful questions about traditions, not out of curiosity alone, but out of respect. She noticed. One afternoon she found him helping a group of younger boys repair a small structure near the community center. He was explaining something calmly, showing them how to hold tools properly. "You didn't have to stay late," she said. "I wanted to," he replied. She watched him quietly. "You're thinking," she said. "About everything you told me," he admitted. "And I'm beginning to understand that being worthy isn't about proving something once." A small, genuine smile appeared on her face. "That's closer," she said. Still, she did not give him full approval. She continued observing, continued measuring his reactions when things went wrong, continued watching whether his commitment stayed steady. One evening as they stood under a sky filled with stars, she spoke again. "If one day we have a child," she said softly, "that child must never feel divided. They must feel whole. Can you promise that?" He looked up at the stars before answering. "I can promise to try every single day," he said honestly, "and I can promise not to run when it becomes hard." She studied him carefully, as if weighing his words. For the first time since that serious conversation, her expression softened completely. "It's about building something that lasts beyond us," he nodded. "I'm starting to see that," he replied. The desert wind moved gently around them again, carrying the scent of earth and distant plants. He knew he had not yet fully proven himself. Worthiness was not granted in one moment. It would take time. It would take sacrifice. But he also knew something else. He was no longer afraid of the weight she spoke about. Instead of feeling pressured, he felt called, and, somewhere deep inside, he understood that the question was no longer whether he cared for her. The real question was whether he was ready to become the kind of man who could stand beside her, not just as a partner, but as a protector of something sacred. The land remained quiet around them. But in that quiet, a future was slowly taking shape. When his work contract finally came close to ending, the air around him felt heavier than before. The days were still warm, the desert still wide and quiet, but something inside him had changed. In the beginning, he had counted how many weeks were left. Now he avoided looking at the calendar. People in the community knew his time was almost finished. Some asked him what his next plan was. Others simply observed him more carefully than before. It felt as if the entire land was waiting for his decision. One evening, he received a call from his former supervisor in the city. A new position was open. Better pay. More stability. A clear path forward. It was the kind of opportunity he would have accepted immediately, just a few months earlier. "Think about your future," the supervisor told him. "You've done good work out there, but don't get stuck." The word stuck stayed in his mind long after the call ended. Was staying the same as being stuck? He stepped outside that night and looked up at the sky. The stars were bright, scattered across the darkness like small fires. The mountains stood silent in the distance. Nothing about this place felt like being trapped. It felt like standing at the edge of something meaningful. The next morning he met her near the same rock where she had once spoken about worthiness. She could sense something was different. "You got news," she said. He nodded. "There's a job waiting for me back home." She did not react immediately. She simply looked out across the land. That's good," she said calmly. "Predictable," he added. "And easy?" she asked gently. He did not answer right away. She turned toward to him. "You don't owe this place anything, and you don't owe me anything." Her words were steady, but he could hear the weight behind them. "I know," he replied, "but it doesn't feel that simple." She had never asked him to stay. She had only asked him to understand what staying would mean. That afternoon he visited her grandmother again. The older woman sat outside, weaving something carefully with her hands. "So," she said without looking up, "the outside world is calling you." He was surprised. "How did you know?" "It always calls." He sat down nearby. "I don't know what to do." "Then don't decide from fear." "Fear of what?" he asked. "Fear of missing comfort." "Fear of missing approval. Fear of missing an easier path." She placed her work down gently. "If you stay, stay because you choose responsibility. If you leave, leave because you choose another calling. But do not pretend one is braver than the other." Her words were simple but clear. For the next few days, he moved through his routines quietly. He continued working hard, continued helping where needed, continued showing up on time. No dramatic speeches, no announcements. But inside, he was thinking deeply. He thought about the conversation when she had said she wanted his child only if he was worthy. He thought about the elder who said belonging requires more. He thought about the children who now greeted him by name when he passed by. Most of all, he thought about the kind of man he wanted to become. One afternoon, while helping repair part of the community center roof, he realized something. He was no longer working to prove himself. He was working because he cared, because he wanted the place to be stronger. That realization changed everything. That evening, he asked her to walk with him. They walked along a familiar path as the sun slowly lowered behind the mountains. The sky turned deep orange, then soft pink. "I made a decision," he said quietly. She did not interrupt. "I turned down the job." "You don't have to do that for me," she said firmly. "I didn't," he replied. "I did it because leaving feels like walking away from something I've only just begun to understand." She studied his face carefully, searching for doubt. "There will be hard days," she said. "There will be moments when you question this choice." "I know," he answered. "You won't have the same comfort you had before. I understand. You may feel like an outsider for a long time." He nodded slowly. "Then I will earn my place." The wind moved softly between them. For the first time, she stepped closer without hesitation. "Staying is not the end of the test," she said quietly. "It is the beginning." "I'm ready for that," he replied. Over the next weeks, his role slowly shifted. He was no longer the temporary worker. He began training with local teams for long-term projects. He started learning more deeply about traditions, not as an observer, but as someone expected to carry knowledge respectfully. He attended more gatherings. This time, he was not standing at the edge. He was invited to sit closer, to listen carefully, to participate when appropriate. The elders still watched him, but their eyes were softer now. One afternoon, the older man who had once asked him about belonging approached again. "You stayed," the man said. "Yes, sir. 'Cause I realized that belonging is built, not found." The elder nodded slowly. "Then keep building." Even with these small signs of acceptance, challenges came. There were days when he felt unsure, days when cultural differences felt heavy, days when he wondered if he would ever fully understand everything around him. During one difficult week, he admitted his doubts to her. "I don't want to fail you," he said quietly. She shook her head. "You only fail if you stop trying." He looked at her. "Do you still question whether I'm worthy?" "I don't question your effort," she said. "I watch your endurance." Endurance. Not excitement, not grand promises, but steady presence. Months passed. The seasons began to shift slightly. The air cooled earlier in the evenings. The land changed color in subtle ways. One night, during a quiet gathering under the stars, he found himself sitting beside her grandmother again. "You look different," the older woman said. "How?" he asked. "Less restless." He smiled softly. "I think I am." "Then maybe you are beginning to understand." As time moved forward, something important happened. He stopped thinking of himself as someone who had chosen to stay. Instead, he began thinking of himself as someone who belonged to a responsibility. He helped mentor younger workers. He listened when elders spoke about history. He supported her not only in public moments, but in private struggles as well. One evening, as they stood once again under the wide desert sky, she looked at him with a quiet certainty. "You didn't stay for comfort," she said. "No." "You didn't stay for praise." "No." "You stayed because you chose the weight." He nodded. For the first time, there was no hesitation in her expression. "This is what I needed to see," she said softly. He realized then that worthiness was never about a single decision. It was about showing up again and again even when no one was watching. The desert no longer felt like a place he had entered. It felt like a place he had committed to protect, and as the wind moved gently across the land carrying the scent of earth and distant mountains, he understood that staying was not the end of his journey. It was the foundation of trust, of family, of a future that would not be temporary. And for the first time since he arrived months ago, he no longer wondered if he should leave. He only wondered how he could continue proving that his choice to stay was not just a moment of courage, but a lifelong promise.